traveled to central Mexico to meet the family of a man who went to work on a farm in the United States and never came back. He had died of heat stroke. His case is a stark warning that as temperatures soar, working outdoors is becoming more dangerous around the world.
We say climate change is a threat multiplier. It triples, doubles, just really increases your chances of getting sicker. And of course, from heat, you can actually die.
We've been tracking down stories of workers in the U.S. who lost their lives from exposure to extreme heat. In many cases, their names are not included in articles about their deaths. We reviewed medical examiners' reports and police records to locate people. That's how we found the family of Salvador Garcia Espitia.
Hola. Hola María, ¿cómo estamos? Muy bien, gracias. Soy Natasha. Mucho gusto. Gracias.
En la llamada que me hicieron, la persona del trabajo me dijo que no estaba consciente. Que él no podía hablar porque él no estaba consciente. Nunca imaginamos que fuera a correr algún riesgo, porque nosotros, pues hasta donde sabíamos, él iba, trabajaba y regresaba.
It's unclear exactly how many workers are dying in the U.S. due to heat exposure, but the watchdog group Public Citizen says it could be as high as 2,000 a year.
These workers are now having to ask themselves whether to go to work and risk their lives or stay home and sacrifice a paycheck.
There are no federal heat protections for the more than 30 million outdoor workers in the United States. In Florida, where Salvador died, activists have been pushing for years for more protections for workers. But they've been blocked by industry trade groups and Republican politicians.
Why wouldn't you ask for the government to do more? We get paid by the hour, but we want to take more breaks. We don't want to work so hard.
On this episode of Fault Lines, we look at the danger of extreme heat for outdoor workers.
I really think that we can all agree that we don't want people dying out in the fields. People should not go to work to die.
This is the small village in central Mexico where Salvador Garcia Espitia grew up. He and Maria fell in love as teenagers and got married a few years later. In 2021, they welcomed their first child, Isaac. They weren't financially stable yet, but were excited to start a family.
Siempre como buscábamos estabilidad. En todos los sentidos, económica, emocional, pero lo primordial era como estabilidad económica, porque aquí es algo difícil. Más.
It became more difficult when their young son Isaac was diagnosed with cerebral palsy and needed specialized treatment. It increased the pressure on Salvador's job at the local dairy plant.
Las terapias eran pues muy costosas. El costo era de la mitad de lo que él ganaba en una semana.
They decided that Salvador would get an H-2A visa to travel temporarily to do farm labor in the United States, where he could earn more money.
Que él pudiera ir y regresar, pero sin correr ningún riesgo.
Eso era la idea.
Sí, que él pudiera volver y que no, o sea, que no fuera como de ilegal.
He was legally here by the United States government. His passport, everything was authorized, so everything was above board.
Entonces, la idea de él irse a la Florida fue para poder comprar medicina para su hijo.
No importaba las horas extra que tuviera que hacer, pero si mi hijo necesitaba un medicamento, él buscaba la manera de dárselo.
In September of 2023, Salvador traveled here to South Florida by bus to begin working. He had trained to work on a tractor, but began his assignment on top of a truck planting sugarcane. On his very first day, just a few hours into the job, he collapsed due to the heat.
No one called 911, and it was his co-workers that drove him to a hospital. And according to the Department of Labor, More than 50% of workers who die of heat-related illnesses die on their first day, and more than 70% die during their first week.
There are no requirements for employers to acclimatize their workers to get their bodies used to the environment.
There should be a process where the person can adjust to the temperature, understand how much hydration is needed, and over 2 weeks get them acclimatized. And not just, I hire you, go to work.
Salvador was put on a breathing machine, and within 3 days, he had taken his last breath. He was 26 years old. According to the medical examiner's report, his kidneys failed and he died of heat stroke.
This is the medical examiner's report for Salvador Garcia Espitia. And I was just wondering, as a doctor, is there anything that stands out to you when you're looking at this?
Core body temperature, 109 degrees Fahrenheit. That is shocking.
109.
That is shocking. We see the danger and the breaking down of all the organs by 107. And he's already at 109.
Did he have to have a prior medical condition for his core body temperature to reach 109?
Absolutely not. Young, healthy people can die from heat stroke. No other problems. And you get exposed, you can die.
¿Le había pasado algo así alguna vez?
Nunca. Me hicieron muchas preguntas sobre si él tenía alguna otra enfermedad, si alguna vez le había pasado algo parecido, pero él nunca se enfermaba de algo más.
And it's a horrible tragedy. I mean, he came here to support his family. You would hope that someone would be checking on their workers a little bit more closely.
There's this thought that people of color have been built to work outdoors, that they thrive working outdoors. And so there's this kind of mentality in some people that if you're a person of color, you can handle the heat.
Around 75% of farm workers in the U.S. are Latino. Extreme heat causes more deaths than any other weather-related event in the U.S. More than 1,000 Americans die every year from extreme heat. By 2050, that figure is expected to rise to almost 60,000 as a result of climate change. Stories like Salvador's are becoming more common. Across the United States, there have been high-profile incidents where outdoor workers have succumbed to the heat.
When someone has heat stroke, you're burning from the inside, you're cooking from the inside, your brain is cooking away.
Your temperature internally is so high that the organs start to fail, and you will have major shutdown of the kidneys, the heart, everything.
This year, the Biden administration proposed the first ever federal heat protections for workers, including access to shade, breaks, and acclimatization to heat. It's expected to be challenged by industry trade groups and Republicans in Congress. For the time being, employers are only legally required to provide potable water, and sometimes they fall short on that.
The workers that we talk to tell us that they oftentimes do not have access to clean, safe drinking water. They are not allowed to take regular rest breaks, to seek shade, to cool down their bodies.
Florida is the hottest state in the U.S. and leads the nation in heat-related illness. 5 years before Salvador died, advocates for outdoor workers and immigrants tried to get the state to pass heat standards, including a training component that could have saved his life.
We count Farm Workers Association of Florida, some responsible employers, all came together to introduce legislation that would have required outdoor employers to provide a 10-minute rest break every 2 hours of work.
Each time, their effort was blocked by industry trade associations and Republicans. Activists devised a different strategy to pass legislation to protect workers in 2023. They decided to try to pass the heat protections locally in Miami-Dade County, the largest county in the state, and home to more than 300,000 outdoor workers.
We had hundreds of outdoor workers speaking in support of this effort, and really, we were on track to pass the first countywide heat standard in the United States.
Large trade associations lobbied Republican state legislators to intervene. The heat bill didn't pass. Republicans pushed through a different law, blocking local governments from establishing heat protections for workers.
Florida lawmakers passed a bill this session that would outlaw local mandates meant to protect workers from extreme heat.
It went into effect in July 2024.
So at the last minute, when the state stepped in and blocked the efforts of Miami-Dade County, how did that feel?
Our members really felt defeated. This wasn't an issue about, left wing, right wing. It was more of an issue about right versus wrong. And it was very disappointing to see that the state handicapped our local cities and counties' ability to take action on this issue.
A similar strategy was utilized in Texas, where Republicans passed a similar bill that prevented local municipalities from enacting protections.
It's inhuman, and it's a horrible bill, and it's a shame that the government passed this kind of bill, not for the people, but instead for the employers.
I've been farming for over 40 years, so I'm a businessman and an employer, and we need more business people running for public office, kind of like Donald Trump.
Rick Roth co-sponsored the bill preempting Miami-Dade County. He also represents Belle Glade, the city where Salvador Espitia collapsed in the field.
Is there something wrong with mandating a 10-minute water break every 2 hours?
To mandate it, yes, I do think it's wrong. We don't want local governments setting their own standards. It's not the local government's job.
Should the state of Florida pass heat protections for outdoor workers?
Here's my thought on that, because I do a lot of research on climate change and other factors. My knowledge base says no, that things have not changed that dramatically, like the news media wants you to believe, that we're going through a cataclysmic temperature increase.
Even if there was the hottest day recorded on planet Earth was just the other day. I mean, and that we know is just a fact.
I think it's overblown.
Do you have sympathy for these workers and for what they're asking for?
Yes, of course I do. I have sympathy that they would like to have easier working conditions. That doesn't surprise me. Why wouldn't you ask for the government to do more? Hey, we don't want to work so hard. We want to take breaks. We get paid by the hour, but we want to take more breaks. We don't want to work so hard.
I would challenge Representative Roth to come spend a day as a farm worker, to spend 8 hours in triple-digit temperatures. These workers are not asking for more breaks. They're asking for the right to survive.
Roofing, fernery, I mean, those people have steam coming off of their body after working outside for hours.
Yeah, I don't know that I would want to be a roofer. That's pretty tough.
Should they get water breaks?
You're asking me the same question 3 different ways. It's the same answer.
Well, they're different.
No, it's the same answer. The same answer is that's the responsibility of the employer.
But if the employer isn't doing that, then what?
I guess you have to go work for somebody else.
We have a bad history on valuing the lives of farm workers, traced back to when people were enslaved.
Dr. Roxana Chicas has spent nearly a decade studying the impact of extreme heat on farm workers.
Agricultural workers have the highest rate of heat-related mortality, 35 times more at risk than any other occupational group.
What is the long-term impact that the heat has on the workers then?
We know that once someone has acute kidney injury, they are at risk for developing chronic kidney disease.
Part of her work involves collecting data on the body temperature of farm workers throughout the day. She hopes this work will educate lawmakers about the dangers of heat exposure. We accompanied her to a fernery in North Florida, where they grow the green leaves that go in flower bouquets.
Fernery workers, they work outdoors, but they work underneath this black mesh. Sometimes people think that the mesh is there to protect the workers, to give them shade, but it's not. It's for the protection of the fern because the fern cannot get direct sunlight.
Lorenzo and Araceli Escobar were wired with heat sensors before they went to work. They have to bunch together around 20 leaves and get paid roughly 50 cents for each bundle.
The workers also work really fast because that fern needs to get on a truck. If it doesn't get to the cooling warehouse within 2 to 3 hours, it starts to wither away. And they don't get paid for that bunch.
¿Sentiste mucho calor? Están 92 grados.
Sí.
¿Cómo te estabas sintiendo?
Sientes mucho como que te palpita mucho el corazón.
¿Tuviste que parar hoy de trabajar cuando estabas allá afuera?
Sí, paramos porque pues todavía se quedan unas personas trabajando, pero nosotros paramos debido al sol que pues quema mucho. A mí lo que es en lo personal me quema mucho la espalda.
Okay. It's his skin temperature and it was 37.85, which is, and that's in Celsius. In Fahrenheit, that would be about 100.1.
¿Has conocido gente que se han desmayado?
Sí, conozco bastantes personas que de aquí de la labor se la han llevado al hospital.
Ah, sí. Que han tenido como un golpe de calor.
Sí, como que se les baja la presión y se desmayan.
They're working with a fever, but no infection. And they have very much the same symptoms that you and I have when we have a fever: cramps, headaches. Sometimes they may feel nauseous.
Roxana and her team analyze blood and urine samples. They take their vital signs, ask the workers questions about how they're feeling, and share the results with them.
En la mañana venía deshidratada y ahorita en la tarde viene un poco deshidratada también. Así que tratar de tomar mucha agua durante el día. The husband has diabetes. And she was right at the cusp of pre-diabetes. Su A1C son los niveles de azúcar los últimos 3 meses. Eso sí le salió alto, 8.4. ¿Le han dicho eso a usted anterior? ¿Sí? ¿Y nunca fue a la clínica? The husband reported that he went to a clinic, but that he didn't take his medicine, that he would go back.
Sí, voy a ir otra vez a chequearme eso.
He's definitely at a higher risk of heat stroke. Muchas gracias por participar. Estos son sus copias.
Okay.
Because they push themselves. They think that they can withstand the heat and they can keep going. But someone like him who has diabetes, that's dangerous to continue to work like that.
What do you anticipate seeing with the health of outdoor workers as temperatures keep rising?
As the temperatures rise, I'm very concerned about workers' health. You know, when we have state governments that are pushing back, stopping local counties from protecting their workers, to me that's just unthinkable because they are so essential to our economy, to our society, to our culture.
We see a lot of statistics of people dying with the current heat waves. People don't understand what one actual value of one life costs.
Jonathan Vasquez has worked as a roofer in South Florida for more than a decade, along with his younger brother Wilmer.
What is the heat like working on a rooftop?
To me, it's if you ever open up a furnace, like the oven, and you feel that heat, you know, not only for like 2 seconds, but for like 14 hours a day. A lot of it, when you touch the tiles, it burns your hands. Touch the shingles, it burns your hands. And it's just miserable.
In August of 2023, the hottest year on record, Wilmer felt sick after working outside for hours and started experiencing severe heat cramps.
Then I seen his eyes. It went from brown to white. That was my moment where like, he's not coming back from this.
Wilmer died the next day at just 29 years old.
The only time I ever cried about it was when at the hospital, the doctor let my mom know, just seeing my mom's face. To me, I know I went into a deep depression because of it. I don't think no mother should have to bury her son.
Jonathan is worried about his own health moving forward, and without any formal protections, he thinks employers will take advantage of workers.
I had some employers call some of these people monkeys, you know. Like they don't see them as humans. If they're not human, I don't have to treat them like human. They see them as animals moving their product. And reality is here in America, you're just paying bills, trying to get by every single week.
As for Salvador's case, after his death, the federal government investigated the company that hired him, McNeil Labor Management. The government investigation said the employer could have prevented his death by implementing safety rules to protect workers from heat-related hazards. In other words, Salvador's death was preventable. The company is contesting government fines that total roughly $27,000. We were able to reach the owner of McNeil Labor Management on his cell phone.
Hello?
He gave us permission to record the call.
Oh, hi. Is this Shannon McNeil? Does McNeil accept responsibility for Salvador Espitia's death?
Not until we know all the facts, because, like I said, we work with a lot of people. Nobody's ever had any real problems in many, many years. Some people aren't healthy, and that's where the heat really gets them.
Yeah, I mean, he was 26 years old, though, and the documents that we saw from the medical examiner did not list any kind of pre-existing condition. The family told us he did not have a pre-existing condition. It seems like he succumbed to heat stroke.
Yeah, it's possible, like I said, that something else caused that. People just, nobody else got sick.
You would accept, responsibility for his death if you find that he didn't have any sort of prior health condition?
I wouldn't say responsibility because, things happen to people that you can't control. We did everything right.
I know you're saying you all did everything right, but a man did die here.
Yes.
Do you think that there should be protections for workers on the local level, or the statewide level, even on the federal level? Because at the moment there are none.
Yeah, no, there's not any. I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. I'm good with guidelines.
Why do you think that other employers do not want these heat protections passed?
Just because it'll cut their production.
I hear you saying you guys did everything you could do to prevent this death from happening, but does that mean that a death like Salvador's is inevitable?
No matter if somebody works 1 hour a day, it's just, anything can happen.
Does that mean that you anticipate that there are more workers that are going to die from the heat?
That's very possible, and the odds are against you when you work as many people as we work.
¿Y qué sueños tuvieron juntos?
Pues lo de nosotros era como tener una casa propia. Era uno de los sueños que veíamos a futuro.
¿Qué es lo que tú crees que va a pasar ahora?
Es difícil saber cómo voy a hacer yo para poder darle a mi hijo lo que él necesita, porque yo ni siquiera estoy segura si mi hijo va a poder tener una vida normal o no. Me dice que bueno, cómo se portó. Y bueno, le envié un audio que no recuerdo.
Maria shared with us her final text messages with her husband the night before he started his new job.
Y me pone, sí, amor, lo sé que te esfuerzas mucho. Y ya es donde me dice, pues buenas noches, amor, ya me voy a intentar dormir, que descansen, los amo mucho.
Y esto fue...
Y ese fue el último mensaje.
Maria filed a workers' compensation lawsuit, and she was able to receive a modest settlement. For Salvador's family, though, his death leaves a gaping hole in their lives.
Mi hijo no va a tener otro padre. Que a lo mejor y para ellos solo es un trabajador más. Pero para nosotros no. A lo mejor y él en el trabajo iba a tener un reemplazo. Pero su familia no.